Welcome back to the discussion Enhancing the Work from Home Experience for Federal Employees, sponsored by Poly on Federal News Network. My guests today are Joe McReel, U.S. Federal Channel Business Manager at Poly, and Ed Roman, U.S. Federal SE Manager at Poly. So we're talking about how people are getting, they're working from home at this point, but some people are starting to go back. You have some weeks that are on, some weeks that are off, some people that are trying to just jump in the office, every couple days or so if they can. How are you working that experience and maybe making that a little bit easier for people? And they might have to do something in their car or, anywhere else in the world as well.
I think what's happened, Scott, is that, we've all been impressed with a drastic change. And, a lot of workers have not had to do this type of work in the past. But I think the world's changing as well. So when they go back to the office, they're going to be empowered with a knowledge and a experience of using tools perhaps they may not have been using before. And I think they'll continue to use those tools. And if the office environment isn't conducive to that, then maybe they will also shift to being part-time telework. I don't think that everyone is going back to the office. I think that we don't know for certain what will happen, but what we do know is that it will be different. And the tools that they've used at home will convey in the office environment. And if they don't, I think that the user base, the customer base, will start to ask for those tools because they become accustomed to that, because it's made their life simpler, more easier. Think about cube worlds, right? Office environments that have cubes with noisy backgrounds. Maybe in the past, when they went to home use and started using headsets, they got accustomed to it. Maybe they didn't use them in the other environments. And now they're like, you know what, actually this makes more sense for me to use this now, because now I really can hear everyone and it's filtering out the background noise and providing acoustic fence of sorts or some sort of noise mitigation that maybe they hadn't experienced before. So I think we're going to see a lot of shifts and changes, but we're going to see also probably an increased amount of new telework initiatives happening across the federal government for home use, continual home use.
That sort of goes into the question I wanted to ask next, which was, is our world ever going to be the same? And I'm not talking from the standpoint of the coronavirus, but from the standpoint of people. We did this great experiment of, can we work from home? And the answer is really yes, we can. And we can only get better from now. We don't have to do it in the sense of an emergency. So, what might we see in the future from telework?
I think there's been a lot I think right now we're in a big discovery mode. There's a big learning going on across the industry, across the world. And what they're learning is understanding productivity, understanding the benefit of working from home, and also cost savings and work-life balance as well, right? And there's a lot of that. And as Poly, Joe and I have been doing this for many years, so we can appreciate the value behind that. I think now, a lot of people can start to appreciate the value of that. There's also cost savings that can convey from actual budgets being associated to office locations and whether or not you actually need to have those sized environments. And then also, I think what you can expect to see is resizing of environments to support the world that's changed as it is with COVID. So your traditional conference room that might have had 20 people or 15 people, that might be downgraded to, that's just a 6-room environment now. And maybe personal office spaces become smaller, or people start to do, hybrid type working where, they go to the office some days and some days they work from home, whereas in the past they always went to the office. A little bit more of a nomadic approach to working. As long as your productivity levels maintain at a high level and there's cost savings and benefits and people are happy, I think overall we're gonna see that type of a shift across the board.
So one of the things that I think people get really tired of is really just being on Zoom calls all the time. Sometimes you're sitting there listening to someone for a half an hour, you have 29 other people who are there, just kind of sitting there looking in other directions and things like that. So, how do you kind of keep yourself fresh, make sure that you're still paying attention and making sure that you're not getting too fatigued in this new world?
I think in some cases, Scott, there's only so much technology can do for a boring meeting. Right. So I think, for people that are hosting meetings, you don't want to have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. I think, from kind of an etiquette standpoint, you want to make sure that you've got the right people attending, the people that absolutely are essential to the meeting, that are contributing members that you need input from. And maybe, maybe that only means that there's 12 people instead of, 18 or something, just judging based on what's the content, what's the subject matter, who do we really need on here. And then I think, just you have to rethink how you plan and schedule and implement your meetings. I mean, I think agendas are more important than ever because, again, we don't want to sit and be reactive. We want people interactive in any meeting across any, whether it's federal government or enterprise, anywhere. Nobody wants to be on a non-productive meeting. So I think the key, especially in a remote environment, is engagement. Employees need to be engaged. They need to be talking. They need to be conversing. And if the subject matter isn't relevant for them or they're not the right person for the meeting, I think those are things that have to be looked at, as well as just, planning them, keeping that regular cadence going with meetings. I think a lot of this is just good business practice to begin with, but I think people are realizing it now more than ever when they look at their calendars and they see that they're just going from one to the next, to the next, to the next, that these are productive and they don't have to be. If we've got, we've had several ourselves internally where we booked it for an hour and turned out we needed 32 minutes and we were done in 32 minutes and everybody moves on with their day. I think those are just really good business meeting practices that people are taking a second look at now to make sure that they're making the most of their employees' time.
Great.
Scott, I also think that comfort and flexibility is important when it comes to being a teleworker. And I think a lot of people don't know that until they experience it, right? So there's different types of teleworkers. There's ones that will have to be on video for every single call. There's ones that will only need to be on audio and perhaps just see content. And then there's ones that will just do the traditional conference bridging calls. That provides a lot of flexibility for that user. If you make sure your home office or your dedicated space is comfortable, that's, to me, probably one of the first things you should make sure of, right? You don't want to be hunched over an iPhone doing a video call. Yeah, then of course you're going to get fatigued. That's aside from boring, that's uncomfortable, right? So so being able to have that flexibility of like, my next call is an audio call and I'm going to go walk the dog because I'm going to go outside and get a little fresh air because I don't want to be cooped up in this office all day. But my next call after that's a video call, so I'll make sure I'm back in time and I'll have my video call and I'll see my content and everything will be nice and fluid. So I think it's important to have that flexibility, that mobility, and that comfort level to really be able to have engaging meetings.
Good tips for the months ahead. Joe, Ed, I really appreciate your time. It's been a really interesting conversation.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you so much.
Our guests today were Joe McReel, U.S. Federal Channel Business Manager at Poly, and Ed Roman, U.S. Federal SE Manager at Poly. I'm your moderator, Scott Maucione, and you're listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Poly.